My attitude toward Syria and Assad has changed very much.
A chemical gas massacre of children just changed everything, starting with U.S. airstrikes on Syria's dictator.
The Syrian people have been crying, begging for such action to stop him.
We'll explain what's happening in Syria, how it started, and where we go from here.
The president now understands who Assad is, and Syria is being looked at in a very different place.
And North Korea's dictator is at it again. And if he figures out how to launch long-range nuclear missiles, our military says we could not shoot them down.
We don't have a significant or really any boost phase intercept capability. It is a very challenging technology.
We'll explain the problems, our options, and what happens next. This is Money, Power, and Politics. Well, President Trump has struggled his first few weeks in office and his poll numbers have tanked. But at the end of the day, we judge our leaders on how they deal with crisis. And the president now has at least two of them. North Korea ramping up missile tests and the dictator of Syria gassing and killing his own people. And right now, we're at a fork in the road. Let's start with background on the crisis in Syria, which the president blames on his predecessor.
Well, I think the Obama administration had a great opportunity to solve this crisis a long time ago when he said the red line in the sand. And when he didn't cross that line after making the threat, I think that set us back a long ways.
Well, Syria is run by a mass murdering dictator who has repeatedly attacked civilians to try to wipe out the resistance to his dictatorship. And former President Obama did say Assad would cross a red line if he used chemical weapons.
That's a red line for us. I didn't set a red line.
To recap, Obama set a red line. Then when Assad used chemical weapons, the Obama administration planned to attack Assad, but then wavered on when to do it.
If we don't confront this now,
Our capacity to execute this mission is not time sensitive.
And wavered over the type of threat Assad posed to our national security.
It also presents a serious danger to our national security.
The notion that Mr. Assad could significantly threaten the United States is just not the case.
And wavered over how big or small our attack on Assad would be.
Limited in duration and scope.
unbelievably small.
This will be more than just what some people have talked about.
A militarily significant strike.
And then Obama backed down and decided to not attack Assad after all because he agreed to give up his chemical weapons. Or so we thought, until the chemical gas massacre of men, women, and children this week.
Who does the administration believe was responsible for that attack?
All evidence points to the Assad regime in Syria.
And now the Trump administration is sending mixed signals. First, Trump said we would not focus on going after Assad. His administration punted Assad's fate to the Syrian people.
I think the status and the longer term status of President Assad will be decided by the Syrian people.
There is a political reality that we have to accept in terms of where we are right now, the reality that it is now up to the Syrian people.
And after the Trump administration said it would not target Assad, Assad grew bolder and stepped up his attacks on civilians with another round of gas.
It crossed a lot of lines for me. When you kill innocent children, innocent babies, my attitude toward Syria and Assad has changed very much.
And so Secretary of State Tillerson shifted from saying this has to be decided by the Syrian people to this has to stop.
Well, there's no doubt in our mind that the Syrian regime under the leadership of Bashar al-Assad is responsible for this horrific attack. And we think it's time that the Russians really need to think carefully about their continued support of the Assad regime.
If nothing is done, these attacks will continue. Assad has no incentive to stop using chemical weapons.
Up until now, the administration said it focused on going after ISIS and other terrorists in Syria instead of Assad. But Senator Marco Rubio says you cannot stop the terrorist unless you stop Assad.
Imagine if you are that father and that is your child who has just been gassed to death by a regime. You will never, ever accept that regime as your rightful leader. And you are full of hatred and you are full of vengeance for what they have done to you and to your family. Put yourself in that position. And that person, many of them, are going to end up joining whichever organization in Syria has the guns and the money to fight Assad. And tragically, the groups on the ground, oftentimes in Syria with the most guns and the most money to fight Assad, are increasingly radical jihadist groups. Bottom line is, the people who killed these children are Bashar al-Assad with the assistance of Vladimir Putin's military forces. That's who should be held responsible, 100% responsible. They are the ones that are gassing their own people.
Okay, now let's bring in retired Colonel E.J. Otero, who is a former director of intelligence operations at CENTCOM. Your perspective. We spoke on Thursday, and you predicted exactly what would happen with the airstrikes. Okay, what happens next?
Well, that was the most reasonable action that the president could take. Now, we have to wait and see what the rest of the international community does. We have to wait and see what the opposition does.
But what if Assad does it again? Then what do we do?
Then we destroy the rest of the 5 bases that were left out.
What if it's not chemical weapons but barrel bombs?
Same thing. Any action against the people right now will be taken by the United States as an affront. And the government of Russia, they already backed out from their initial position of providing unconditional support to Syria. Not anymore. They already said yesterday, our support to Assad is not unconditional. So the wise thing that Russia must be telling Assad right now is take a knee, wait and see. The Americans are here to play real games, and they're not messing around. So if you were to do something against the people, the United States are going to strike you back. And we have said so. We have strike packages for all the military bases, all the air bases that they have. They have 6. We bombed 1. We still have 5 more to go if we need to.
Okay, I want to shift gears to the crisis in North Korea, but start with a little bit of background on how we got to this point, beginning with perspective from Congressman Dennis Ross that we're really hearing on both sides of the aisle.
We have to take them very seriously. We have to be prepared not only to defend against these missiles, but also to protect the interests of the free and democratic governments that are out there that are being threatened by North Korea.
This crisis really started more than 60 years ago. Japan conquered Korea, then we conquered Japan. Stalin and Truman divided Korea along the 38th parallel. The Soviets shaped the North, we shaped the South. Then the North invaded the South. The war turned into a stalemate, but never officially ended. So Kim Jong-un could try to end it now.
I think the United States has seen China for 25 plus years say that they're concerned about North Korea, but we haven't seen them act like they're concerned about North Korea.
Okay, so North Korea, you have this erratic dictator who seems to thrive on attention. So how do you go down when he keeps trying to escalate up in the interest of attention?
Well, the fascinating thing is that the strikes in Syria happened when President Trump was meeting with the president of China. And China is a key piece into what's going on with North Korea. It is imperative that the United States and us get China to stop supporting their nuclear development program. Everything that they're using, all the equipment that they're using is provided by China. So we need to stop that. And by doing what we did in Syria, we're sending a message that we're not short of doing it if need to in a place like North Korea. Of course, the consequences are a little bit, are considerably more complicated because the North Koreans can attack the South. And they would do it because, like you said, the guy's crazy. But the Chinese are the key piece here.
What would happen if we struck North Korea?
Oh, they would certainly send rockets into South Korea. The initial volley from North Korea is detected at 50,000 rockets. Even if we were to strike and decimate many or most of those rockets, if a couple of them get away and go into, and they're actually able to launch them into South Korea, then you have an international incident because you will have a South Korean death. So that's why you need to have a well-coordinated approach on the North Korean piece with China. China has to be tight at the hips with us in whatever we do with North Korea.
Colonel E.J. Otero, thank you for your time.
Pleasure.
Okay, coming up, we have some big changes in the works at the state capitol, and we'll explain the push to ban red light cameras in Florida. State lawmakers have a plan to ban red light cameras all across the state, and Merissa Lynn shows us what to expect.
The video caught on red light cameras can be jaw-dropping. Sometimes it's just a close call. In other cases, it's much worse.
One of the most deadliest forms of causes of traffic crashes is running red lights.
It's why the red light enforcement program started in 2009 to reduce the number of accidents.
We have seen a reduction, and so, you know, if it saves one life, it's all worth it.
Yet that isn't the case for the whole state. In a report released earlier this year by the Florida Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles, the number of accidents shot up more than 10%. The state looked at 148 intersections, comparing the number of crashes before and after red light cameras were activated. The number of incapacitating injuries, the ones where a person must be carried from the scene of an accident, has increased by almost 27%. Now, some state lawmakers want to put an end to the program. And just last month, the House voted to eliminate red light cameras here in Florida.
It hasn't increased public safety. And then there's also the question of the revenue. The revenue that's going to these local jurisdictions simply are not being put into a pot that's dedicated to public safety.
We don't make a dime from it. We operate simply on the notion of either approving the allegation or not. And so anybody who wants to consider it a cash cow for the sheriff's office, I can tell you right now, we don't make any money on it.
Red light citations will cost violators $158, and that money goes into the government's general fund. Last fiscal year, violators poured in almost $60 million, with more than $50 million of that going into the general fund.
What may have started out as a well-intentioned proposal has turned out to be more of a financial incentive for those local jurisdictions.
And some drivers claim the cameras force them to slam on their brakes to avoid getting a ticket.
You know what? We want people to stop because we don't care about the ticket because we don't receive any of the money. We want you to stop because we don't want you to kill yourself or kill somebody else. And that's always been our goal.
For now, the red light cameras are here to stay. A repeal proposal in the Senate has stalled in its first committee. For Money, Power, and Politics, I'm Merissa Lynn.
Now, coming up, Matt Towery has nailed the predictions for us for the past 2 years, and he has a new round of predictions that may surprise you, from Susan Rice to President Trump and the growing investigation of Russia. Time now for predictions and fallout from another wild week at the White House and Congress around the world. Matt Towery is going to join us here in just a couple of minutes. But first, Mike Flannery breaks down the shakeup of the National Security Council after Bannon got the boot.
He's the guy Saturday Night Live portrayed in a death costume, bossing around the President of the United States.
Yes, of course, Mr. President. I'll go sit at my desk. Yeah.
It now seems maybe not. There was a bipartisan uproar when President Trump put hard-right culture warrior Steve Bannon on the normally non-political National Security Council. Vice President Pence told Fox News Channel's Martha McCallum that Bannon's departure was no big deal.
This is just a natural evolution to ensure the National Security Council is organized in a way that best serves the president in resolving and making those difficult decisions.
There were reports that first son-in-law Jared Kushner was behind Bannon's banishment from the NSC. The White House did not announce it, only quietly filing paperwork. Those documents showed Trump added 3 more traditional members: National Security Advisor Lieutenant General H.R. McMaster, plus the Director of National Intelligence and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. The NSC is supposed to advise the president about how to respond to threats to America. Among those celebrating, Republican Congresswoman Ileana Ros-Lehtinen, who tweeted, "Steve Bannon's removal from National Security Council is welcome news. I called for him to write himself out in January." Senator John McCain called it a good move, but many on the left take that Saturday Night Live characterization almost literally and dream of Bannon being banished forever.
I'd be very pleased that he's not on the National Security Council. My hope is that he would have no role in government at all, that he would be completely out.
Okay, time to bring in author and Fox 13 pollster and predictor of things, Matt Towery. Thanks for joining us. Okay, let's start with Bannon getting removed from the National Security Council. Why was he there in the first place, and what does this tell us about the dynamics of the Trump administration?
Well, the dynamics are ever changing. Why he was there in the first place was always a little bit of a mystery to me, but the fact of the matter is, I think he's being removed now. This is just my guess. I think the White House wants to go after Susan Rice, and they feel like they can't do that through Congress. They can't do that if they have Steve Bannon sitting in on national security meetings as well. So they're going to try to clean up their act before they try to then get into the act of the prior administration.
Susan Rice, okay. Do you think there's anything there to suggest she may have committed a crime as the president has suggested?
Well, you know, here's the issue that I keep asking as a lawyer as well, and that is, where are the crimes on either side? Now, we know unmasking, if it's then given to people who aren't supposed to receive that information, could be a crime. There's been no evidence of that. But all of this contact with the Trump campaign with Russia, no one has yet to say what that crime would be either. So it's sort of like D.C. is obsessed with two things, neither of which right now are tantamount to a crime.
Well, collusion would certainly be a crime with a foreign agency. That's where, if that foreign government is trying to meddle and interfere in an election and you become part of it by way of collusion.
Well, that's easier said than done. The federal statutes on that are pretty difficult. They're not. It's not like for example, if they were to say we've got WikiLeaks coming out next week and someone's telling someone, that doesn't necessarily mean they're colluding or influencing the election. Just like Susan Rice, if she unmasked someone, as long as she did it for a reason that was under her purview, that wouldn't be illegal either.
You've got this politicized, of course. This
Yes.
is you can't get politics out of politics.
That's right.
But what does Nunes, stepping aside, tell us about how this is going to proceed in the House?
Okay, they got to clean up the House because Nunes got way out of control. He went over to the White House, said he had fresh information. It came from the White House. That's pretty clear now. They're getting him out of the way so they can bring on a new chairman who will be able to pursue this issue with regard to Susan Rice and also with regard to the overall Russia issue, which I think is the bigger issue they're going to have to deal with. And they've got to have clean hands. That gives them cleaner hands right now.
Time now for predictions. You've had the golden touch all year, last year too. Okay, prospects for tax reform getting passed. If so, and when?
40% chance. We talked at the beginning of this year, and I said I didn't think any of this stuff was going to happen quickly. It's not. They're probably going to try to take a stab at both health care and tax reform. I think you've got a clear problem. And we talked about this too, Craig. I said the president was going to end up bumping heads with the members of Congress. That's where we are right now. And one day he likes the moderates, and one day he doesn't like the moderates, and one day he likes the conservative caucus there, and the other day he doesn't. So it's going to be an ongoing play here.
60% no tax reform. What about health care reform take two? What are the chances?
Oh, I'd give that about a 40% chance too. I mean, it's highly likely they don't pass anything this year. Of the two, I would think tax reform would come first.
We have the nuclear option invoked by the Senate.
Yes.
Gorsuch. Where does this take us in the future? What are the implications of this?
You know, we were headed this way anyway down the road, Craig, because you have a U.S. Senate, just like the House, that now is so partisan that the idea that you have to get 60 votes to end the filibuster, invoke what they call cloture, which made sense back when people were more civil in civilized times, it doesn't make sense anymore. We're so polarized that to say someone has to have 2, 3, 4 more votes than beyond a majority, it won't work anymore. It's a tragedy, but it's a reality of politics today.
Wide open, give us the prediction right here and now that we can play back in 3 months and say, wow, he called it before anybody else.
I think that Susan Rice issue will become more significant. I also think that you will find a direct tie somewhere in the Trump campaign to Russia that will keep this going on for the next year.
You're also the author of News Vesting. You track current events to the stock market. Which stocks will take off? Which ones will tank based on what you're seeing now?
Well, right now, I think that you still have the Trump stocks doing well, but and those were infrastructure stocks and the like, military and the like. You've still got a budget to be created, and the most likely thing the president does get to do is pass a budget. So I think those infrastructure stocks, I think some of the aerospace and defense stocks are going to continue to do well. I also suspect that you see telecom doing well because they just got a huge boost in eliminating privacy restraints that were created by the Obama administration. So you'll see telecom do a little better as well.
Matt Towery, thank you as always.
Thank you, Craig.
Coming up in our humor segment, in our tribute to the late Don Rickles, President Trump hosts our Celebrity Roast. This week we lost a legend in comedy. Don Rickles, the master of the insult, passed away. And we've honored Rickles, by the way, for years with a political roast segment we do here. And tonight we thought we'd give President Trump a turn at the mic from one Don to the other. In tribute to Mr. Rickles, here's tonight's Celebrity Roast.
Tomorrow they will say, Donald Trump rants and raves at the press. I won't do that. I'm just telling you, you're dishonest people. Hillary Clinton did a reset. Remember with the stupid plastic button that made us all look like a bunch of jerks? Here, take a look. He looked at her like, what the hell is she doing? I guess it was the biggest electoral college win since Ronald Reagan. Well, I was given that information. There's nobody I have more respect for, well, maybe a little bit, but than reporters. And the leaks are absolutely real. The news is fake. I don't mind bad stories. I can handle a bad story better than anybody. We do have other people. You do have other people, and your ratings aren't as good as some of the other people that are waiting. Russia is a ruse. I have nothing to do with Russia. We had a very smooth rollout of the travel ban. This administration is running like a fine-tuned machine. As they say, never Trump.
Now, please check out our YouTube channel. Search for Craig Patrick's Money, Power, and Politics and click subscribe at the top of the page for more humor segments, extended interviews, investigations, and prior shows you may have missed. Folks, that is our show. Thank you for joining us. We will see you next week for another round of Money, Power, and Politics right here on Fox 13.